When most people imagine life on America's West Coast, they think of Pacific beaches, golden sunsets, mountain backdrops, and vibrant cities that stretch along the ocean. From Southern California surf towns to the green harbors of Washington, the coast has always symbolized opportunity, beauty, and adventure. But in 2025, the reality is far more complicated. Rising seas, stronger storms, drought, wildfire smoke, earthquakes, and housing crises are all colliding to make daily life harder than ever for millions of people living on the edge of the Pacific. Unlike temporary challenges like traffic or high rent, the problems tied to the coast are relentless. They return season after season, year after year, forcing residents to adapt or face the consequences. In today's video, we're breaking down 10 West Coast cities that are having the hardest time in 2025. From San Diego to Anchorage, we'll look at how nature, economics, and daily life collide, and why the West Coast dream is becoming a West Coast struggle. 1. San Diego, California. San Diego is known for its perfect weather, beaches, and laid-back lifestyle. But in 2025, this coastal paradise is facing serious challenges. Rising seas are eating away at beaches in places like Mission Beach and La Jolla, while high tides now routinely flood roads and boardwalks. Some areas that were once sandy, stretches for volleyball and surfing, are disappearing, replaced by seawalls and sandbags. At the same time, San Diego faces the broader crisis of drought. With the Colorado River at historic lows, water shortages are hitting the region hard. Outdoor restrictions, rising water bills, and ongoing disputes over supply have made residents rethink how sustainable life in Southern California really is. For homeowners, insurance rates near the coast have skyrocketed, while renters face record-high prices. Businesses dependent on beach tourism are also struggling as coastal erosion changes the landscape. San Diego still looks like paradise in photos, but for those who live there, the daily fight against water, both too little and too much, is becoming impossible to ignore. 2. Los Angeles, California. Los Angeles is America's entertainment capital, but in 2025, it's also on the front lines of West Coast environmental struggles. Along the beaches of Malibu and Venice, coastal erosion has accelerated, with storms washing away sand and threatening homes perched precariously on cliffs. Each winter storm season leaves behind damage that costs millions to repair. Beyond the ocean, Los Angeles faces wildfire and drought. Smoke from massive wildfires still blankets the region some summers, turning the sky orange and disrupting life for millions. Meanwhile, the water crisis means stricter limits, higher bills, and more tension between development and sustainability. For locals, daily life is expensive and fragile. Insurance premiums for hillside and coastal homes have skyrocketed. Renters face record costs in a city already notorious for housing struggles. Businesses in beach communities deal with flooding one season and fire risks the next. Los Angeles is still a city of dreams, but those dreams come with growing costs. In 2025, the reality is clear. Paradise here is always one disaster away from disruption. 3. San Francisco, California. San Francisco's waterfront has always been iconic. From the Embarcadero to Fisherman's Wharf, it's one of the city's most recognizable landscapes. But in 2025, that same waterfront has become one of San Francisco's greatest vulnerabilities. Rising seas and stronger storm surges are no longer distant predictions. They're present-day realities that threaten neighborhoods, infrastructure, and billions of dollars in real estate. The Embarcadero, once bustling with tourists, locals, and open-air markets, now requires constant maintenance and temporary barriers just to stay operational during high tides. Businesses that depend on foot traffic are finding it harder to plan for the future, and some have already relocated inland. Meanwhile, critical infrastructure lies in harm's way. BART stations, muni tunnels, and electrical systems are all situated dangerously close to the waterline. A single severe flood event could shut down transportation for hundreds of thousands of commuters, grinding the Bay Area economy to a halt. For residents, the crisis is felt most directly in their wallets. Insurance premiums are climbing, and homeowners in flood-prone areas face coverage restrictions that make it harder to protect their property. At the same time, city taxes and fees are increasing to help fund billion-dollar flood defense projects, like seawalls and upgraded stormwater systems. For many, especially middle-class families already struggling with San Francisco's affordability crisis, these extra costs feel overwhelming. Property values in at-risk neighborhoods are beginning to wobble, raising fears of a future where only the wealthiest can afford to stay protected. Beyond the financial strain, there's also an emotional toll. San Francisco's identity has always been tied to the Bay, from its shipping history to its role as a cultural landmark. Now, that water is a looming threat as much as it is a source of beauty. The city still thrives as a global hub of tech and culture, but its relationship with the Bay has shifted. What once symbolized opportunity and prosperity now serves as a daily reminder of the city's fragility. In 2025, San Francisco isn't sinking, but it is standing on the edge, fighting to defend the very waterfront that made it world famous. 4. Oakland, California. Just across the bay from San Francisco, Oakland faces its own set of coastal and economic challenges that in many ways are even more pressing. While San Francisco grabs the headlines, Oakland's struggles often unfold quietly. But in 2025, the city is becoming a clear example of how climate change and inequality collide on the West Coast. Low-lying neighborhoods near the waterfront are increasingly vulnerable to flooding and sea level rise. Areas that once housed thriving industrial facilities, warehouses, and residential blocks now face regular high-water events that threaten property and livelihoods. The massive Port of Oakland, one of the busiest shipping hubs on the West Coast, is at the center of this crisis. Rising seas combined with stronger storm surges put billions of dollars worth of goods at risk. Any disruption to the port doesn't just affect Oakland, it sends ripple effects through supply chains across the entire United States. For Oakland residents, flooding is only part of the story. The housing market has been under pressure for years, squeezed by rising rents, displacement, and gentrification. Families already struggling to make ends meet now face additional burdens: higher insurance premiums for flood-prone homes, higher utility costs during heat waves or storms, and limited affordable housing options. Many longtime residents are being priced out, while new developments often cater to higher income groups who can afford the extra cost of climate adaptation. Adding to the stress is Oakland's aging infrastructure. Much of the city's drainage system, public housing, and road network was never designed to handle the level of flooding or severe weather that scientists predict for the coming decades. Roads are easily damaged by heavy rains, and some public housing developments are particularly vulnerable, leaving low-income families at disproportionate risk. The people most affected are often those with the least resources to recover or relocate. Oakland has a strong history of resilience and community organizing, and those strengths remain. But in 2025, the city finds itself in a constant struggle to balance growth, equity, and environmental risk. As climate change accelerates, Oakland's challenges are no longer hidden in the shadow of San Francisco. They are becoming a defining part of life for the city's residents and its future. 5. Sacramento, California. Sacramento isn't on the ocean, but as California's capital, it's tied directly to West Coast water struggles. In 2025, the biggest challenge here comes from flooding and drought, two extremes that collide in dangerous ways. The Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, which provides water to millions across the state, is under extreme stress. Levees built decades ago are increasingly fragile, while rising seas push saltwater further inland, threatening both drinking water supplies and farmland. Heavy rains, when they do come, risk overwhelming flood defenses and inundating communities. Residents face strict water restrictions, rising costs, and the constant threat of either running out of water or being hit with devastating floods. For businesses, agriculture, and daily life, the balance feels increasingly unstable. Sacramento might not have waves crashing against its shores, but in 2025, it's a city defined by the West Coast's biggest question: how do you survive when water is both disappearing and overflowing? 6. Portland, Oregon. Portland is known for its rivers, green spaces, and quirky creative culture. For years, the Rose City was celebrated as one of America's most livable urban areas, blending environmental awareness with a vibrant community spirit. But in 2025, Portland is facing a perfect storm of climate pressures, housing struggles, and infrastructure challenges that are reshaping daily life. One of the city's most pressing problems is flooding along the Willamette River. Higher rainfall and rapid snowmelt from the Cascades push river levels beyond normal limits, threatening neighborhoods, bridges, and businesses downtown. In certain years, parts of the waterfront that were once filled with joggers, tourists, and food carts now sit underwater. Even temporary floods cause millions of dollars in damage, and residents worry that without major investment in flood defenses, the problem will only worsen. On the other end of the spectrum, hotter summers are bringing wildfire smoke into the city with growing frequency. Fires raging across Oregon and Northern California send thick gray clouds over Portland, blotting out the sun and leaving the air unsafe to breathe. Schools close their playgrounds, outdoor events are canceled, and families scramble to buy air filters and masks just to get through the season. For vulnerable residents, especially children, seniors, and those with respiratory issues, these weeks of smoke are more than an inconvenience. They are a serious health threat. Meanwhile, housing affordability has become a crisis. Portland has long struggled with rising rents and property values, but climate pressures make the issue worse. Homeowners must now consider the costs of flood insurance or smoke-proofing their houses, while renters face skyrocketing monthly payments with little protection. Homelessness has surged, with thousands living outdoors or in makeshift shelters, many of them directly exposed to the flooding and poor air quality that wealthier residents can at least partially shield themselves from. The city has invested in new affordable housing projects and flood-resilient infrastructure, but progress has been slow compared to the pace of change. The Portland that once symbolized livability and sustainability now finds itself struggling to hold on to that reputation. Climate threats, economic stress, and social inequality collide in ways that test the city's resilience every day. In 2025, Portland isn't just quirky and green. It's a city fighting to adapt to a future that has arrived much faster than expected. 7. Astoria, Oregon. Astoria is one of Oregon's oldest coastal cities, perched where the Columbia River meets the Pacific Ocean. In 2025, this picturesque small city is facing big problems. Rising seas and stronger storms are eating away at the waterfront, threatening historic buildings, roads, and fishing docks that have defined the community for generations. For residents, flooding has gone from rare to routine. Roads are often closed, and small businesses along the waterfront struggle with repeated cleanup costs. The fishing industry, once the backbone of Astoria, faces challenges from both climate-driven changes in fish populations and storm damage to boats and docks. Tourism, another key part of the local economy, is also at risk. Visitors may still come for the views and history, but constant flooding makes daily operations harder for hotels, restaurants, and shops. Astoria's charm remains, but its fight against the ocean is becoming more desperate each year. In 2025, the small-town struggle reflects a much bigger West Coast reality. No community is too small to escape the pressure of rising water. 8. Seattle, Washington. Seattle is famous for its skyline, its booming tech industry, and of course, its coffee culture. But in 2025, the Emerald City is also one of the most challenged coastal hubs in the Pacific Northwest. While the city has long prided itself on innovation and progress, it now finds itself wrestling with a set of climate and infrastructure challenges that are redefining daily life. Rising seas are one of the most pressing threats. Waterfront areas like Pioneer Square, the historic piers, and the busy port are increasingly vulnerable to flooding. On stormy days, waves rise dangerously close to key transportation routes and shipping facilities. The Port of Seattle, one of the busiest in the country, faces constant disruptions, and those disruptions ripple through the entire region's economy. For a city built around trade and global connections, even small interruptions in port activity can have huge consequences. At the same time, heavier rainfall has become a regular feature of Seattle's climate. Once known as the city of drizzle and gray skies, Seattle now faces extreme downpours that overwhelm its drainage systems and flood major intersections. Roads are frequently blocked, basements in older homes fill with water, and transit systems struggle to keep up. The cost of upgrading these systems runs into the billions, but progress is slower than the pace of climate change. City officials admit that their planning is often reactive rather than proactive, and residents are the ones who pay the price. Housing is another crisis that intersects with these challenges. Seattle's soaring housing costs are already some of the highest on the West Coast, and climate proofing only makes things worse. New developments must be designed with flood resilience in mind, pushing prices higher, while existing homeowners face mounting insurance premiums for properties now classified as high risk. For families already stretched by rent or mortgage payments, these additional expenses feel crushing. And then there's the issue of wildfire smoke. Though wildfires don't burn inside the city, every summer smoke drifts down from eastern Washington, Oregon, and California. Thick orange skies and poor air quality force residents indoors for days at a time. Businesses close, outdoor activities halt, and vulnerable populations struggle with respiratory health. Seattle is a city known for resilience and ingenuity, but in 2025, its reputation as a hub of progress is tested daily by the forces of nature. The question facing Seattle isn't whether it can innovate, but whether it can innovate fast enough to keep pace with a changing climate that grows more unpredictable every year. 9. Tacoma, Washington. Just south of Seattle, Tacoma is facing many of the same struggles, with even fewer resources to adapt. The city's port is a critical hub for shipping, but rising seas and storm surges put billions of dollars of trade infrastructure at risk. For residents, flooding hits hardest in low-income neighborhoods near the waterfront. Families already dealing with housing insecurity face rising insurance costs and damage from repeated storms. Meanwhile, local businesses struggle with interruptions, closures, and cleanup after heavy weather events. Tacoma is also grappling with the same housing crisis as much of the West Coast. Rising rents, displacement, and economic pressure make it harder for communities to recover after disasters. In 2025, Tacoma's fight is both economic and environmental. Protecting its port, its people, and its neighborhoods is a challenge that shows no signs of easing. 10. Anchorage, Alaska. Anchorage may not be the first city people picture when thinking of the West Coast, but as Alaska's largest city, it sits directly on the Pacific's edge, and in 2025 it's facing some of the harshest coastal changes in the nation. For decades, Anchorage has been known for its rugged natural beauty, framed by mountains on one side and the Cook Inlet on the other. But what once made it a symbol of resilience and frontier living has now become a vulnerability as the city finds itself on the front lines of climate change. One of the biggest challenges is melting permafrost, a problem unique to Alaska but devastating in its consequences. Roads buckle, building foundations sink, and oil and gas pipelines, which Alaska's economy depends on, are being destabilized. Entire neighborhoods have seen cracks open in the ground, and repairs are costly. For a city already spread across a vast area, maintaining infrastructure is becoming a financial nightmare. At the same time, rising seas and coastal erosion are forcing nearby villages along the Alaskan coast to make impossible choices. Some indigenous communities are already relocating inland, abandoning land that has been home for generations. Anchorage, as the state's urban hub, is tasked with absorbing many of these displaced residents, creating new strains on housing, schools, and healthcare systems. The city's population is changing rapidly, not by choice, but by necessity. Storms are also hitting harder than ever before. Anchorage has always faced harsh winters, but warmer ocean waters have added new intensity to coastal surges and windstorms. These events are damaging infrastructure and flooding low-lying neighborhoods near the shoreline. Insurance premiums are skyrocketing, leaving some families unable to afford protection, while the state government struggles with the mounting bills of disaster relief and adaptation projects. Despite these challenges, Anchorage remains a city of extraordinary resilience. Alaskans are tough, used to long winters and unpredictable conditions, but even lifelong residents admit that the pace of change is unlike anything they've experienced before. What once felt like distant warnings about the future is now an unavoidable daily reality. In 2025, Anchorage is more than just a city dealing with local weather. It's a frontline case study for how climate change transforms life on the Pacific coast. Every cracked road, every storm surge, and every relocated family is a reminder that the impacts are not decades away. They are happening here and now, reshaping Alaska's largest city before our eyes. From San Diego's sunny beaches to Anchorage's icy shores, America's West Coast cities are under immense pressure in 2025. Some face flooding on sunny days, others battle wildfire smoke and drought, and many are pouring billions into defenses just to keep daily life moving. What all of these cities share is the same reality. Living on the West Coast now means adapting, preparing, and accepting that the Pacific Ocean is no longer just a backdrop. It's an active force reshaping daily life. The problems don't mean people will stop living here, but they do mean the future of West Coast cities will depend on creativity, resilience, and constant innovation. For the millions who call these places home, the ocean is both their greatest treasure and their greatest challenge.